Male feminist Jonathan Blow releases a statement that Starfield is problematic because of all the female NPCs. That's right. Bethesda has gone out of its way to be so inclusive that the vast majority of the characters you encounter in the game are female, from pirates to miners to girl bosses. All of these characters are female. However, because of the way that Bethesda games work, you are going to be killing those females. You are going to be shooting them dead. You are going to be committing violence against them. And that, in Jonathan Blow's mind, is misogynistic because most of the player base are male. Because so many of these characters are female, this game is, in his mind, promoting violence against women. This is hysterical to me. It's a really good example, I think, about of how just these woke social justice activists will never ever be satisfied with anything. They'll always like say something is problematic or something's weird about this game or that they do this or that or that this isn't equal enough and that they need to make changes. But like Starfield is probably one of the most woke AAA games I can think of. Maybe aside from like Red Dead Redemption 2. Like seeing Starfield and like seeing how they depicted this universe has been laughable to me. And it's so weird seeing people on both sides like kind of argue that like Starfield like these games aren't woke, that being woke isn't a thing, that like these games aren't trying to push an agenda, because this is the exact same kind of attitude we got in like 2008 with games like Resident Evil 5 being considered racist because like you're fighting zombies in Africa. Like it's the same kind of logic. It's the same kind of warped, twisted logic that really has no basis in reality. It is not an adequate representation of the game, of the franchise, of like the player base, the developers at all. It's just a poser, someone who claims to care about claims to care about the industry, claims to care about women, who is just com- complaining for the sake of complaining, right? There's no getting around this. There is just no value whatsoever in these kind of critiques, right? There is no reason at all to take Jonathan Blow seriously. And of course, like this extends to a wide range of other topics. Like this is one of the people who has spoken out against The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and stuff like that. Like he's known for being like one of the most pseudo intellectual like uh game developers out there. Someone who like religiously goes after games that don't games that appeal to mainstream audiences. Like accusing Zelda of being misogynistic, accusing it of being like too violent, like accuse like it's a laughable mindset. It really is, and I don't see enough people really addressing that. Like I imagine this is going to be one of those situations that people just don't address. This is like an individual who, much like Phil Fish, much like Toby Fox, has an unwarranted kind of place in the industry because of an alleged success, which I think in a lot of ways Braid and like Fez was like the early example of everything wrong with the indie game scene, with like the over politicalization of it, with like the bias among the game journalists, the lack of real talent, like praising your friends basically, right? Like I think both of those things were kind of a forerunner to what we would get later, right? With Undertale, with Gone Home, with stuff like that. Like people didn't realize anything was wrong until like 2014 or so, but it is the same thing, right? Like, why exactly are we expected to take this fraud of an indie game developer seriously when it comes to criticisms of of video games, right? This guy has like consistently gone after games for really petty reasons. Like I'd almost compare him to like Alan Moore, right? Someone who allegedly has success in the comic space, someone who is really worshipped and valued in spite of like a lack of real talent, right? Exactly like that. Someone who is praised for his political views as opposed to like his actual contributions to the medium, which he seems to hate, right? Very, very Alan Moore-ish here. And I I really have to wonder just how long it's gonna be until like people start addressing this guy and his nonsense because this has been going on for like over a decade at this point. Like I've seen this guy release statements about like Breath of the Wild, Star Fox Zero, like all sorts of like great Nintendo games, and like seeing him like come out against Starfield, like in a way, I hate Starfield more than anyone, right? But like in a way, it's like I absolutely don't want to see him talk at all, right? Like it kind of goes into what I was saying like earlier this year with like the Super Mario Bros. Movie and its critic reviews is that like I don't want to hear these people talking about this product like ever, right? Like these guys I take so I I dislike them so much that I don't even want to be reminded that they even exist. And unless like someone gives me like a screen cap or like someone reposts it somewhere, like I'm not gonna see it. But occasionally I do see it. And occasionally I am reminded that these people exist, that they get so uppity over like perceived slights against their Marxist movement that it's frustrating. Like whatever faults that Starfield has, whatever faults that like modern AAA games have, like you can't really accuse them of being misogynistic based on like some weird assertion about like oh you're probably playing as a male character who's killing all these women. Like it just doesn't make any sense. Like, how exactly is this like something that you blame the developers for? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, if you didn't have female characters that you went up against, you would be complaining about that, right? Like, that's what it comes down to. Like we knew what people were complaining about like 10 to 15 years ago, 20 years ago, when it came to the idea of like female characters in games. And now that you're seeing like them being pushed to the forefront in this really artificial, fake, unrealistic way. Like we're seeing the same people like become more and more extreme with their nonsense, like accusing video games of promoting violence against women. Like it is ridiculous and it needs to be called out more